Every morning at exactly 7:10, train number 214 arrived at the small town of Ashford. The station was never crowded. Few office workers, couple of college students, and one elderly station master, George Miller. For 34 years, George had never missed a single shift. He greeted every passenger with the same warm smile. He believed a train doesn't just carry people, it carries stories. One chilly Monday morning, as passengers hurried onto the platform, a little boy, no older than 9, stepped off the train. He wore an oversized green jacket, a worn backpack, and carried a small blue lunchbox. He looked around, as if searching for someone. Then, without saying a word, he placed the lunchbox on an empty wooden bench, looked at it for a few seconds, and quietly boarded the next train, leaving the station. George frowned. "Young man, you forgot your lunch." But the train doors closed. The boy disappeared. George picked up the lunchbox. It felt surprisingly heavy. He expected sandwiches or fruit. Instead, there was a folded handwritten note taped to the lid. It read, "Please don't throw this away." George decided not to open it. He placed the lunchbox inside the station's lost and found office, thinking the boy would surely return tomorrow. The next morning, 7:10, the same train arrived. The same little boy stepped off, walked to the same bench, looked around, then quietly placed another blue lunchbox beside the first one. George immediately walked over. "Son, are these yours?" The boy nodded. "Yes." "Then why are you leaving them here?" The little boy smiled sadly. "They're not lost. They're waiting." George looked confused. "Waiting for who?" The boy whispered, "My dad." Before George could ask another question, the train whistle echoed across the station. The boy quickly climbed back aboard. Once again, he disappeared. That evening, George couldn't stop thinking about him. He finally opened the first lunchbox. Inside, there wasn't any food. Only a neatly folded paper crane, an old family photograph, and a letter. The first line made his heart skip a beat. "Dear Dad, Mom says you aren't coming home, but I still believe you'll find these one day." George slowly sat down. His hands began to shake. He looked inside the second lunchbox. Another letter, another paper crane, another photograph. Every letter was addressed to the same person. Everyone ended with the same sentence. "I'll keep waiting at platform 3. George quietly wiped away a tear. Who was this child's father? And why did he believe a train station was the only place he would ever come home? The next morning, George made a decision. He wasn't going to let the little boy leave again without learning the truth. But hidden inside the station's old archive room was a forgotten accident report from 10 years earlier, one that would change everything George thought he knew. The next morning, George arrived at the station an hour early. For the first time in years, he unlocked the dusty archive room beneath platform 3. Old shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of forgotten files, lost luggage reports, passenger records, and accident investigations. George searched for almost an hour until one faded folder caught his attention. Across the front, someone had written in red ink, "Train 214 incident, 10 years ago." George slowly opened it. Inside were photographs of a terrible train accident. The report explained that one passenger had disappeared during the rescue operation. His body was never found. The missing man's name was Daniel Carter. George froze, because he remembered that name. It was the same surname written on every letter inside the lunchboxes. Just then, the station clock struck 7:10. Train 214 arrived. The little boy stepped onto the platform once again. This time, George was waiting. "Good morning." The boy smiled politely. "Good morning, sir." Gently held up one of the letters. "I read it." The boy looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't want anyone else to." George smiled kindly. "You don't have to apologize. I just want to understand." The boy looked down. "My name is Noah. My dad disappeared when I was just a baby. Everyone says he died, but Mom never actually saw him. So, I believe he's still somewhere." George quietly sat beside Noah on the old wooden bench. "And these lunchboxes?" Noah smiled. "When I was little, Mom told me Dad always came home hungry after work. So every year, on the day he disappeared, I leave him lunch, in case he finally comes back. George's eyes filled with tears. How many years have you done this? Noah looked toward the railway tracks. This is the 10th one. Just then, a woman hurried onto the platform. She looked exhausted. Noah. There you are. She apologized to George. I'm sorry if he's bothering you. George shook his head. Not at all. You must be Emma. She looked surprised. How do you know my name? George handed her the accident report. I think there's something you should see. Emma's hands began to tremble. She hadn't looked at those papers in years. Then suddenly, one photograph slipped from the folder. It landed face up on the platform. George picked it up. But something was wrong. Very wrong. In the background of the accident photo, standing near the damaged train, was a man wearing Daniel Carter's railway uniform. He wasn't injured. He wasn't unconscious. He was walking away. George looked closer. The date stamped on the photo matched the day Daniel disappeared. Emma covered her mouth. That's impossible, George whispered. Someone knew he survived. But why was it never reported? Before anyone could answer, an old man carrying a black suitcase stopped beside them. He had overheard everything. His face turned pale the moment he saw the photograph. In a trembling voice, he said, I've been carrying that secret for 10 years. Noah looked up at him. The stranger slowly removed an old railway badge from his coat pocket. I was the train conductor that day, and what I'm about to tell you will change your lives forever. The old train conductor looked at Noah. Tears slowly filled his eyes. My name is Arthur, and for 10 years, I've prayed for the courage to tell the truth. The station became silent. Even the arriving train seemed to disappear into the background. Arthur took a deep breath. The day of the accident, your father survived. Emma gasped. No. Arthur nodded. He pulled 3 passengers out of the burning train before anyone else arrived. He was a hero, George whispered. Then why didn't he come home? Arthur lowered his head. Because while saving the last child, a second explosion threw him into the river. By the time rescue teams searched, he was gone. They never found his body. Noah looked confused. So, my dad didn't leave us? Arthur immediately shook his head. Never. The last words I heard him say were, tell my wife and my son, I was trying to come home. Emma collapsed onto the station bench. For 10 years, she had secretly wondered if Daniel had chosen another life. Now, she finally knew the truth. He had been fighting to return until his very last moment. Arthur slowly opened his old black suitcase. Inside was a small waterproof metal box. I couldn't bring myself to open it. I found it floating near the river 2 days after the accident. I've kept it ever since. George carefully unlocked the rusted clasp. Inside was a broken wristwatch, a family photograph, and one sealed envelope. Across the front, Daniel had written, for Emma and Noah. Emma's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, Daniel had written the letter only a week before the accident. My dearest Emma, you're reading this. Something has happened. Please don't let Noah grow up believing I stopped loving him. Tell him I carried his little toy train in my pocket every day. Tell him I dreamed about teaching him how to fish, how to ride a bicycle, and how to become a good man. If I don't make it home, don't spend your life waiting beside the window. Live. Smile. Love again, if your heart allows it. Because every happy moment you have will be a gift to me. And Noah, if you're old enough to read this, remember, a man's greatest strength is not how long he lives. It's how deeply he loves. Love always, Dad. By the time Emma finished reading, everyone on the platform was crying. Noah gently folded the letter, pressed it against his heart, then quietly asked, can we stop leaving lunchboxes now? Emma looked at him. What do you think? Noah smiled through his tears. I don't think Dad is hungry anymore. I think he's finally home. 1 month later, Platform 3 looked different. The old wooden bench had been restored. Beside it stood a small bronze plaque. It read, in memory of Daniel Carter, a father, a hero, a man who never stopped coming home. Travelers often paused to read it. Many left white flowers. Some left handwritten notes for loved ones they had lost. The bench became known throughout the town as the Bench of Hope. George retired later that year. Before leaving the station for the last time, he handed Noah an old railway whistle. It belonged to me. Now it belongs to someone who understands. Every train carries a story. Years passed. Noah grew into a young man. He never became a train driver. He never became a station master. Instead, he became a firefighter. Every time someone asked why, he smiled. Because my father spent his last moments saving strangers, I want to spend my life doing the same. Every anniversary of the accident, Noah still visited Platform 3, but he never brought a lunchbox again. Instead, he brought fresh flowers, placed them gently on the old bench, looked toward the railway tracks, and smiled. Because he finally understood something his father had tried to teach him without ever saying the words. Sometimes, the people we love don't come home the way we hoped. But the love they leave behind never misses its train.